Hey, I'm Pat Porter. I'm the broker for RecLand Realty. Here we talk about the rural land business and ideas and information to help you better manage and enjoy your own property. Today I'm going to be interviewing a couple of guys from the Louisiana Land Bank. We're going to be talking about some of the ins and outs and details about financing rural land. I think you'll like it. Hey, I'm sitting here with Ronnie Bennett, Jonathan Wright from the Louisiana Land Bank. They're at the Winsboro, Louisiana branch office. And as a matter of fact, those of you listening on the podcast, these are the two that sponsor our podcast. So they're the ones to thank for that. I got a real nice direct message this morning from actually a couple of people. I told them about one, people that listen to the podcast and appreciated them. So these are the guys that make it happen. So we're going to have a good conversation with them. We're going to be talking about just some of the nuts and bolts in general of lending, rural lending, and these guys, the Louisiana Land Bank is part of the Farm Credit System. Now, if you're in a different state, the Farm Credit System is going to be called something other than the Louisiana Land Bank, but it's going to be there. Texas, Heritage, what are some of the other?
You got Lone Star, you got Capital, and there's a lot of them.
Exactly, around the country. So anything Farm Credit System is, anything you hear today is going to be real closely related, if not pretty much the same, with wherever you are, whatever state you're in. If you're dealing with a bank that's part of the farm credit system, part of a federal charter of rural lending. And I might not have said that exactly right, but that's kind of the gist of it. But anyway, guys, and y'all just jump in and out any way you want to answer. I just got a couple of questions here. First of all, Ronnie, how long have you been involved in not just the land bank, but farm and land services in general?
Well, I've been in about 8 years altogether. I was there with FSA for about a year and a half, getting my training with farm lending, basically, I guess you'd say. And then I've been with the land bank for 6.5 years, involved with farming my whole life. But the lending aspect, about 8 years.
Okay, your family's still
Yeah.
farming, right? Yeah.
I've been farming probably 40, 50 years, I guess.
I got you.
So,
Jonathan, I know you got a little bit of family heritage because we actually did business with your dad a long time ago at the land bank.
That's right. So been around the land bank my whole life, and again grew up around farming too because my uncle's farmed, and been in banking for close to 10 years now. With the Louisiana Land Bank for about 5.
Okay.
So, been around lending for a while now.
All right. I'm going to jump right into some of the basic questions that I've had to answer from people just dealing with you, buying and selling land through RecLand over the years. But in a nutshell, how is using the land bank or one of the banks, part of the Farm Credit System, how is using that different than, say, using a big brand bank like well, I won't name any names here because I don't like them. Y'all know, but any of the big brand banks you see on TV commercials, how is Land Bank different from those?
Well, I mean, one thing, we are a co-op, so we are owned by our borrowers, and that basically we're able to give money back to them instead of somebody up the chain that owns the bank making the money. We give the money back to the borrowers at the bank. The way we finance things, we can lock long-term rates and things. It makes a lot of difference when you look at financing.
People ask all the time, "Hey, what's the interest rate?" Well, I'm not going to ask you that because we all know that ebbs and flows a lot. But you guys have a lot of products. I always tell people, people say, "Hey, well, how long can you borrow money for the land bank?" Because I recommend y'all, as y'all know, in different branch offices around the state, especially in Louisiana. And, you guys can stretch it on out there for, 20 years and plus now on some products.
Some 30 years.
Yeah, some 30. And we can lock a rate as low as, a year or variable also. Long-term fixed rates don't necessarily fit everybody's, bag. So, for somebody that's not as vulnerable to risk, they can do it 5 years and get a little bit of a better rate. Also, we have that patronage that we do pay back, which is part of your interest that you get back too. So
yeah, that's a big deal. In fact, we'll talk about that in just a minute separately. But Yeah, one thing I've noticed in dealing with different lenders, because when people buy land and they're financing it, a number of times they've gone to a big box bank, I'll call it that, and they just don't understand
Right.
the nature of rural land, and so they come back with a big list of demands and questions and things they need, and I'm going, no, you don't need this, because I know for a fact that I can call it 10 different lenders and none of this stuff applies. So I think a lot of that's just a disconnect. They don't understand rural land the way y'all do.
Yeah.
The farm credit system was designed to help, finance rural farmers, rural land, and it's been over 100 years now that it's been established, and you've got guys have been working at the land bank for 30 plus years. They've been around this a long time and understand it. And sometimes when we don't know the answer, we got somebody we can call that does.
Yeah.
So, we understand the rural financing side of things, where a lot of times, like you said, big commercial banks, they don't, because that's not where the bread and butter is.
Yeah.
That's where our bread and butter is.
Another little piece that I think is important is you guys have the ability to, up to a certain amount, you do, just for lack of a better way of saying, in-house appraisals. We're not always, y'all aren't always having to go out and hire a third-party appraiser that's another part of the whole mix. You guys are able to, through your data and through just knowing what you know, you're able to do in-house appraisals up to a certain amount. Isn't that
Usually
true?
that's $250,000.
Yeah, for a loan officer,
Or
that has that authority. Not all
Right.
loan officers in land bank do have
Yeah.
that, but we do have the in-house appraisal department that can do any size loans.
That's correct.
And as long as they're not just bowed up and tied up, they'll usually accommodate us and get those appraisals out to us pretty quick. But then there are times in out of state or things like that we do have to hire those out. In our area, it seems like majority of ours are done in-house,
That's right.
and there is a fee for our appraisals, our bigger appraisals, for what me and him can do, there's no fee, but but they're at a fraction of what somebody on the outside you generally would charge,
Yeah.
So,
Well, even that threshold, that officer threshold, 250,000, that's a chunk, and to have to go hire that, that saves a bunch of money. I mean, I just know from deals that we help people with.
well, majority of our deals are in that size or lower a lot of times. I mean, majority of the loans are going to be 250,000 or less a lot of times.
Saves time, saves money. So I mean, like I say, I'm a fan. So if it looks like, man, Pat's really pumping them guys, well, no, I am, because I'm a big fan of farm credit system, and we've used the land bank personally for our own stuff. They're the top 3 in banks that we recommend to clients. So yeah, I'm a fan. Just full disclosure. Let's talk about the patronage piece, because in my mind that is one of the biggest differences between y'all and XYZ Bank out there in general. When we say patronage fee, basically the way I've explained it to people is when you get a loan from Louisiana Land Bank, you're going to have a small fee, and they'll explain that like the minimum amount, the maximum amount, and all that. But you're going to have a small part of that fee where you're actually buying stock. Is that a good way to say it? Buying stock in Louisiana Land Bank or in the farm credit system in general. You're buying stock in the Louisiana Land Bank, small little piece of stock, and it's going to, as of the last number of years, it's going to pay back a dividend. So it's not just money thrown away, it's good investment money, and that's an asset that when you cash out that loan, when that loan's paid off, you sell the property or pay that loan off, you get that capital back, as well as you've earned dividend on it over the years. So heck, I may have just explained the patronage.
I was about to say, I don't know if we need to really go into any further.
That's just me having explained it to customers, over the years, because like I said, we've had to pay, because I look at the settlement statement and see that patronage fee, and I thought I forgot about that. It looks like an expense. It's really not an expense. It's a tiny bit of an investment.
Right.
But tell me how that works in terms of where that money goes and how it's used.
It's 2% of the loan amount, up to $1,000. Once you get to $1,000, it's capped.
It's capped at $1,000?
It's capped.
Okay, that's the part I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
And people that have borrowed through land bank and the later day, older days, it wasn't always that way, So that's something that people that borrowed 30 years ago don't remember, because I think it was up there and it was per loan too,
Right, and it's not per loan anymore.
That's right.
It's per
So
Into
max
your
is
individual.
$1,000.
Max
Right.
$1,000.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah, and when you think about it, I mean, the returns on that $1,000 are pretty
Really
substantial.
good.
So
Yeah, we paid back the last 3 years. We paid back 3 years, right?
Yep.
1% of the borrower. Basically, it's the interest refund. As long as the bank does well, we have it forecasted to continue paying it, and I think we can continue paying 1% out to our borrowers.
Okay.
And you get that check. You get that in a check in April.
Annual check.
You
Yeah.
go spend it on whatever you want to spend it on. Put it on your
that's
loan.
right. That's right.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I remember a number of years ago when I remember a big piece of property we bought, and we used we used Winsboro office. You'll know old people, and we'd get, and it took a couple of years to get cashed out of that deal because it was a big tract. We'd get those dividend checks every year and go, dang, and you're saying it amounts to about 1% now.
Yes.
So if
Right
your
now.
so if your loan percentage interest on your loan is say 5.25%, by the time you get that back, you're 1%. You're netting paying 4.25%.
That's
So
great.
That's right. That's right. It may not always be 1%, but it's still something back.
yeah. And there's only a little in my whole history with the land bank. There's only a little short gap, wasn't there? A 1 or 2 year period.
There
That,
was.
I think it was about 2 years in
there
the
was
last
2
15
years.
that we hadn't paid it out.
That's
Back
correct.
in 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
Or something.
That had nothing to
like
do
that.
with our main operation.
yeah, and there's a whole story behind
There's-
where that went. But just being straight up honest, it's the real world. There was 2 years that they didn't pay a dividend, but that was unusual time in big economics here in our country. So anyway, all that said, the patronage is a big deal. And then when you pay that loan off, that $1,000 is still there as an asset. It's a credit.
It's a credit to their last payment, basically.
Exactly.
If their last payment's $1,000, they won't owe us anything.
Exactly.
And that's the reason we don't really like to consider it a fee, because it's not something that they're paying and not getting back. It is something they get back.
It's
in the end.
an investment. You're buying stock in a land bank, so to speak.
Right.
And what's the biggest misconception about borrowing money for rural land? I mean, what's the biggest thing you guys run into all the time where you got to back people up and say, no, that's not how we do it, or we can't do that? What's the biggest one?
Well, I think one of them is that you have to be a farmer to borrow from the Louisiana Land Bank. If you're not a farmer, if you're a doctor, buying something agricultural, we can definitely finance that for you. If you're a doctor buying RecLand, we can definitely finance that for you. Also, we can lock the long-term rates, just like you get a 30-year house loan. We can do a 30-year loan on a piece of land for you. Ron?
Yeah. And like you mentioned a while ago, we talked about it at lunch a lot of times, is that down payment. Generally, land bank's a 20% down type deal, but if it were to appraise for a little more than they're buying it for, we can take that extra as part of the down payment. Somebody could take 10% maybe and still have an 80% or 75% loan to value after it's all said and done. The old thought pattern was always we can only do 80% of the loan, either by the sale price or appraisal price, whichever's less. And it's no longer that way. If the land appraises for $50,000 more than what they're buying it for, then we can have a little less down payment.
I got that's a huge deal, and that's sort of a newer thing.
Yeah.
Back to now. I know in the old days, a number of years ago, that worked because I remember specifically a deal with the Winsboro branch at that place where we found a piece of property and we were just buying it really well.
Yeah.
And we, it appraised for a lot more than we were buying it for, and we didn't have to put hardly anything in it because of the appraised value was so much more. And then it shifted where no matter what it appraises for, you got to have 15 or 20% down payment of the purchase price or the loan amount. And now you're saying it swung back just a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, we can let some people benefit off the deals that they're getting. So.
Well, let's just say it's just a straight up deal, because most deals are like that. It's hard to find that deal where you're gonna, it's gonna appraise for a whole lot more than you're buying it for. But just your normal deal, you got it. Typically, it's 15 or 20% of the loan amount into the deal.
That's right.
Yeah.
And credit factors, of course, will change that. But somebody with good credit, 15-20% down. On anything under $350,000, $350,000 or more, generally it's 20%.
So what you said something pretty good. You do not have to be a farmer to borrow money from Louisiana. Well, I know. I mean, like I said, I signed my name on stuff, and I worked for a farmer when I was a kid, but I'm not one. That leads into another question: the houses.
Yeah.
People have a big misconception that if a home's on a property, it won't qualify for y'all. But I know it will, so tell us how.
That's correct. I mean, we can do house financing and lock long-term rates, and that can be a house on a 2-acre lot, or that can be a house on 40 acres.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought the house had to be a certain percentage of the overall project.
That's not correct. Now there are some guidelines we have to follow as far as the price of the house. That generally now that's pretty high.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly what that number is.
280 something.
285 maybe, or something like that. If you're doing just a straight, 2-acre lot. Anything over 10 acres, we consider a farm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can't finance a house in downtown Monroe on
Right.
2 acres. It's got to be rural.
Rural.
In a town of 2,000 or less, something like that, I believe.
Okay.
Those numbers may change.
Say the house on 2 acres out on Lone Cedar Road. Are y'all's products on that kind of thing as competitive as
Secondary.
typical?
I mean, if you were financing with a local commercial bank, yeah, I think we would be there as far as locking that rate. If you're looking at taking that to the mortgage secondary market, no, our rates are not going to be comparable to that.
Because that's not the main part of what y'all do. I mean, it's just
That's right.
a product.
What we can do though is offer annual payments. If you're a farmer looking to buy a house, we could do annual payments. That might meet your needs better than, the secondary market where you have to pay monthly.
Yeah, I was going to say secondary market. I can't imagine saying, I want to pay that annually.
Yeah. Good luck. Good luck. And when you consider that patronage refund too, it brings her rate down a little lower, closer to that secondary market. We're still not there, but you can get close.
Yeah.
And sometimes we just work better for that person than the secondary market does.
And that's pretty good considering that's not the main. That's not y'all's bread and butter. Last thing I want to ask is because I think this is where it really matters to most people that are going to looking to buy property and want to use Farm Credit System here in Louisiana Land Bank. What do people really need to do? I mean, what's the best way to sort of have their ducks in a row before they email you or call you?
Probably different from both of us. Kind of how we like things.
How can you help people better if they'll do X?
Just have their stuff together. When they look at that piece of property and they know they're putting an offer in or have put an offer in, have the legal description ready. If they have an attorney that they want to use in mind, have him in mind. Be prepared for the down payment. Get your taxes. I guess your tax refunds. Returns back together. So that's what we go off.
2 years, 3 years.
Depending on the size of the deal, at least 3 years. On the smaller, 250, no, it's 500 and less, $500,000 and less now.
Less.
We can do 1 year.
1 year.
Really?
Tax return,
Tax
yeah,
return.
of your current last year's tax return. And we'll help you fill out an application or send it with you.
Application, balance sheet, and tax returns
what we have to go off of to get started.
on 500 and low.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Say that again, on 500 less application, a balance sheet, financial statement for the
Financial
average guy.
statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
And tax returns. 1 year tax returns.
Okay. Well, shoot. And then having cash, available cash for a down payment.
Yeah.
Right.
That 15 or 20%. And is there a one size fits all credit score? Hey, you got to be above X or don't even bother kind of.
No, not really, because other credit factors can always, weigh out the credit score. Or if there's medical payments on there, or the issues, then you can kind of overlook those versus just being late on a loan. But
we do have a minimum.
we do have a minimum
of 680.
680.
But
right.
if it's below what he said, we can
You guys
still work with them. To
look
try
at the whole picture.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I got you. So I know we've had stories, and just because some of y'all know me, I got a little bit of sense of humor, a little bit of a smart aleck. I know Ronnie and I've had conversations over catfish where people have called him with like a 4-something credit score, and and folks, I'm glad you're watching, appreciate you wanting about it, but that's going to be a tough
Right.
tough row to hoe for these boys.
And I
You
think
know,
that would be for anybody.
Yeah,
Anybody.
exactly.
Any bank in general would have, I think, a hard problem with that.
Try to work on that before you come in.
yeah, exactly. So, well, guys, you know, I appreciate what y'all do. I appreciate the whole farm credit system in general. Appreciate y'all. Appreciate y'all's friendship.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate you having us.
You know, thank y'all for sponsoring the podcast and this information. Some of you may have some questions, some specific questions you want to address to these guys. Their information is going to be in the description, the show description. You'll be able to reach out to them. Their email will be there. Their office phone number will be there. Link to the Louisiana Land Bank website will be there, where there's some good information. I think there's some amortization programs on there too. You can kind of guesstimate a payment sort of thing.
We have a loan calculator on that website, so
Yeah.
that's a good tool to use.
So reach out to these guys. Oh, man, I almost forgot. I don't live in Louisiana, but so I can't use y'all. Well, if property you're buying is in Louisiana, these guys can help you.
Or if you live in Louisiana,
Yeah.
buying property outside of
If you're a Louisiana resident and you want to buy one of these Great Missouri Farm or something, these guys can still help you. So
That's right.
anyway, don't get locked in by the word Louisiana. There's some other pieces of that puzzle that can work in your favor. So,
Right.
guys, appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, man.
Yeah,
Enjoy the life. Let's go eat
appreciate it.
lunch again.
We'll do it. We'll do it.